Hello, so this is a video about things you should know before using the database migration service in AWS, DMS, to migrate from a SQL database to DynamoDB. The first limitation you should know is that the DMS service does not support joins. And joins are going to be likely important if you're moving from a SQL database in which your data is spread out. You have one-to-one and one-to-many relationships between your tables. And if you have a bunch of one-to-one relationships, you're going to want to merge those tables into, or merge the records in those tables into a single item in DynamoDB. You don't have to do this, but it's much more efficient because it reduces the amount of API calls that you make in DynamoDB, and each one has a cost. And as you know, DynamoDB, not the most efficient at joining data or combining data from multiple items, especially if those items are in different partitions. If you would like to know the basics of how partitions and sort keys and partition keys work in DynamoDB, visit my website, 101coder.com. I have an article explaining the basics of DynamoDB. And so back to the limitation on joins. So you're going to want to have a single table in DynamoDB, most likely, with all your data. You're going to want to, say for example, if you have a employees table in your SQL database, then you have a salary table. You're going to want the salary and employee to be in the same item unless that employee has changed salaries. Then you could maybe put it in a separate item. But if you only have one salary per employee, you want that to be in one item in DynamoDB, so you don't need to make multiple get item calls. Well, DMS cannot combine tables for you. So if you need to do that, you're going to have to make a pre-merged table on your source database. And you can simply make a create table query on your SQL database to do that. You can also use a view. But if you're going to use a view, let's talk about another limitation. Views cannot be used with the change data capture feature of DMS. So you can use the pre-merged table. If you have a way to keep it up to date, then CDC will capture not only the data that was there before your full load, but also the data that was updated during your full load, and also data that was inserted or updated after your full load. A full load itself without CDC won't capture changes that occur during the load, or afterwards. So you might think, oh, I can use a view to do all this merging for me. It'll just be the perfect solution. It'll work if you're doing a full load and you don't expect to copy that data that also changed during the full load. Meaning, it'll work great if you're going to have an outage. So how can we avoid an outage when migrating to DynamoDB from a SQL database? Well, I'm not sure the best way to do that. One way might be to use triggers in your source database to keep the pre-merge table up to date. However, I don't think this is a common design pattern. This is what AWS support told me. And I don't know of other companies or teams that have done that. So it's a possible way around this limitation, but the docs also recommend not using triggers they recommend disabling them during the migration for performance reasons. However, you might have to try that and let me know how it goes if you choose that option. And that could prevent orphan data and could prevent an outage. But I think a common solution is just to go with an outage. It's simpler, doesn't require changing settings to enable CDC. You'd have to enable logical replication on your source database. So there's some additional configuration there. The last limitation that I will mention when using DMS to migrate to DynamoDB is that currently DMS does not support validation for DynamoDB targets. So this means you would need to do your own validation, and you can, simplest thing, just get a live item count in your DynamoDB table after your migration and make sure it matches your source total count. And you might want to do this in stages as you migrate different record types from your source database. You can then check the record count in the target to make sure that all the data was copied. Any discrepancies that are there, you might want to check on duplicate items, null values, or anything that would come into play when you're populating your partition key and sort key, because there's only one sort key for an item in DynamoDB. You cannot have two with the same sort key. So that's about it. For validation, you can use that get live item count in the console. You could use party QL, I don't know if I'm saying that right, to do full table scans and analyze everything, just for analysis purposes. So you're not going to be doing this frequently because it is expensive. Or you could use something like a Python script with Boto3 to basically go through with maybe a nested loop to go through all the data in your DynamoDB. Maybe you'll be using batch read or scan operations, and then compare that to your source database. So these are some of the things that I'm working on at my job and still in the middle of, but wanted to make this video and share what I've learned. Let me know if there's any questions. If you've done any of the things that I'm talking about here, then you could share that knowledge. Leave a comment. That would be awesome. I might make a follow-up video once I learn more. And thanks for watching.